Imagine you're in, like, this massive, sprawling room.
Right.
Thousands of people are in there with you. There's no boss. There's no central authority figure with a microphone or anything.
There isn't even a clock on the wall.
Yeah, exactly. No clock. And your only collective job is to agree on the exact, precise sequence of events that happened today.
Which sounds hard enough on its own.
Right. But here's the catch. A huge percentage of the people in this room are, well, they're pathological liars who are actively trying to steal your money.
It is the absolute definition of a hostile environment. I mean, that room full of liars isn't just some thought experiment for a Ridley Scott movie.
No, not at all.
It's the foundational reality of every single open blockchain in the world.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tearing apart the actual computer science behind how these networks somehow survive that hostile environment.
Yeah, we have this massive foundational text on blockchain consensus mechanisms that we're going through.
We're looking at the real mechanics, proof of work, proof of stake, and all those bizarre alternatives that have popped up over the last decade or so.
Our mission for you today is to basically shortcut past the usual crypto hand-waving.
Right. We aren't just going to define basic concepts you already know.
Exactly. We want to look under the hood to understand the brutal game theory, the elegant math, and really the frustrating compromises embedded in every single network you interact with.
Because they all make compromises, right? Every single one of them.
Oh, absolutely. We need to understand not just what these mechanisms are, but how they solve one of the most notoriously difficult problems in distributed systems.
Which is achieving immutable truth when you literally cannot trust a single soul around you.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the hardware, like the ASIC farms or the staking pools, we have to look at the architecture of the problem itself.
Right. Strip away the token prices and the market cycles for a minute.
Exactly. Because at its core, a blockchain is really just a replicated log.
It's thousands of independent nodes, and each one is maintaining a full, identical copy of an ordered list of state transitions.
Which isn't exactly a new concept, right?
No, not at all. If you've ever built distributed systems for, AWS or Google Cloud, you've battled this beast before.
Right.
Systems like Raft or Paxos, they solve this exact same state machine replication problem inside traditional data centers every single day.
But the context in crypto is wildly different. I mean, in a Google data center, you own every node in the cluster.
You trust them.
Yeah, you trust them, like a server might drop a packet or a hard drive might corrupt, right?
Sure. Or a power supply blows out.
Exactly. But that server is just faulty. It isn't malicious.
Right. It isn't actively forging cryptographic signatures to trick the server in the next rack over.
But crypto introduces this adversarial reality. First off, the network is permissionless.
There is no trusted membership list. There's no active directory saying who is allowed to be there.
Anyone can join. And second, because there is immense financial value at stake, participants are heavily incentivized to actually attack the system.
They want to double spend. They're trying to rewrite the history of the ledger and extract value.
So the protocol has to reach perfect consensus even when a massive chunk of its own infrastructure is actively waging war against it.
Which brings us perfectly to that 1982 paper by Lamport, Shostak, and Pease.
Oh, right, the Byzantine generals problem.
Yeah, this is the bedrock of Byzantine fault tolerance.
Mm.
And the military analogy they use in the source text is just so perfect for understanding the math here.
Let's lay that out for the listener. So you have several divisions of the Byzantine army surrounding an enemy city.
Geographically separated, right?
Right, geographically separated. And there are no radios. They only have messengers on horseback to communicate.
And they have to coordinate. They either all attack or they all retreat.
Because a partial attack means the army just gets completely slaughtered.
But the devastating twist is that some of the generals are traitors.
Right, and they are actively coordinating to engineer that slaughter.
Let's actually game this out, because the math here literally dictates the rules of modern crypto. Say we have 4 generals.
Okay, 4 generals. Let's say General A, B, and C are loyal, and General D is the traitor.
So General A sends a messenger saying, attack. General B sends a messenger saying, attack.
Simple enough.
But General D, the traitor, sends a messenger to A saying, attack, and a messenger to C saying, retreat.
Oh, so he's intentionally feeding conflicting information to the loyalists.
Exactly. He's trying to shatter their consensus.
So how do the loyal generals actually figure out the truth in that scenario?
They cross-reference. General A tells General C, hey, D told me to attack.
And C says, wait, D told me to retreat.
Right. So they catch the traitor in the lie. But Lamport's math proved that this cross-referencing only works under a very strict threshold.
And that threshold is absolute, isn't it?
It is. The loyal generals can only reach a guaranteed agreement if more than two-thirds of the total generals are honest.
The famous 3F plus 1 formula.
Yep, where F is the number of traitors. If you have one traitor, you need at least 4 generals total.
So if you have 33 traitors, you need 100 generals.
Exactly. That two-thirds supermajority rule isn't just a suggestion. It's basically a law of physics for modern distributed systems.
You'll see that exact two-thirds ratio hard-coded into Ethereum, Cosmos, almost every modern network today.
But here's the thing. Classical Byzantine fault tolerance assumed you knew exactly how many generals were on the battlefield.
Right, you could count them. 100 generals, 34 traitors.
But on a permissionless blockchain, you can't count the participants. You just have an open IP port on the internet.
Anyone can connect at any time, which opens the door to something we have to talk about, the Sybil attack.
Named after Sybil Dorset, the famous psychiatric patient with dissociative identity disorder.
In network security, a Sybil attack is basically when a single malicious actor pretends to be a million different people.
And this completely breaks Lamport's original math.
Because if the rule is just one node, one vote, I don't need to hack the honest generals, right?
No, why would you?
I just go to AWS, spend a few $1,000s, and spin up 10 million virtual machines.
And suddenly you instantly hold 99% of the voting power.
Exactly. I vote to rewrite the blockchain, steal all the funds, and shut down the network.
Which is why, for decades, computer scientists thought a decentralized, permissionless digital currency was simply impossible.
Until Satoshi Nakamoto published the Bitcoin white paper in 2008.
Right. And the big breakthrough there wasn't actually the cryptography.
No, it was the solution to the Sybil problem.
Tying network influence to a scarce, real-world resource that physically cannot be faked.
So you don't just get a vote by showing up with an IP address anymore.
Exactly. You get influence proportional to your provable expenditure of a scarce resource.
And that concept is the beating heart of everything we're analyzing in this deep dive.
Proof of work ties your influence to computational energy. Proof of stake ties it to locked financial capital.
Right, so faking a million IP addresses is completely useless if every single one of those fake identities still has to front its own share of a genuinely scarce resource.
You still have to pay the toll.
So let's look at that first iteration, proof of work. Basically tying consensus to pure thermodynamics.
The network demands that you prove you burned a massive amount of electricity.
How does that actually work mechanically? I mean, it's a hashing lottery, right?
It is, and it relies entirely on the properties of the SHA-256 algorithm. So a miner packages pending transactions into a block header.
Okay.
That header includes the hash of the previous block, which is what forms the literal chain, and a 32-bit field called the nonce.
Right, and the protocol sets a difficulty target. It basically says, for this block to be valid, the SHA-256 hash of the entire header must start with, say, 20 leading zeros.
And because SHA-256 is deterministic, but practically random in its output, there is just no way to reverse engineer an input that will give you 20 zeros.
So your only option is brute force.
Pure brute force. You set the nonce to 1, hash the header. No zeros, set the nonce to 2, hash it again.
You're just blindly firing into the dark.
Trillions of times per second. Modern ASIC miners are doing exactly this. It's a planetary scale lottery.
So your hash rate basically dictates how many lottery tickets you can scratch off every second.
Exactly.
But wait, if I buy a million ASIC machines and plug them into a hydroelectric dam, I'm guessing vastly faster.
Right, absolutely.
The source text notes the Bitcoin network is doing hundreds of X hashes per second. That's hundreds of quintillions of hashes.
It's a staggering amount of computation.
So if we were guessing that fast, won't we just find the winning nonce instantly?
Well, not if the protocol adjusts the rules. This is the thermostat of the network, the difficulty adjustment.
Ah, right.
The protocol is hard-coded to target one block every 10 minutes. So every 2016 blocks, which takes exactly 2 weeks at that 10-minute pace, every full node independently looks back.
They calculate the average block time over that period?
Right. If a massive new mining farm came online in Texas, blocks might have been found every 8 minutes instead of 10.
So the nodes see that discrepancy.
And automatically, without any human intervention at all, the protocol lowers the target.
It demands 21 leading zeros instead of 20, making the lottery mathematically harder to win.
Exactly. So the network perfectly absorbs the new hardware.
The hash rate goes up, the difficulty rises, and the heartbeat settles right back to 10 minutes.
You cannot mine Bitcoin faster by throwing more machines at it. You just secure your percentage of the global hash rate pie.
And that global hash rate is what provides the security via the longest chain rule.
Right. In proof of work, the canonical truth is simply the valid chain with the most cumulative computational work behind it.
Let's walk the listener through an actual 51% attack so they can see how this physical security works in practice.
Because this isn't just theoretical. Smaller networks get attacked all the time.
Yeah, let's look at Ethereum Classic, which actually suffered massive reorgs. How does an attacker actually pull that off?
Well, the attacker wants to double spend, right? So they start by depositing a huge amount of Ethereum Classic, say $5 million worth, onto an exchange on the main chain.
Okay, so the exchange sees the money arrive.
Right. But while they do that, they fire up their own massive secret mining farm.
So they're mining in secret.
Yes, they take the block right before their exchange deposit, and they start mining a shadow chain in private.
And in the shadow chain, I assume they don't send the $5 million to the exchange.
Exactly. They send it back to another wallet they control. Now it's a drag race.
The honest network is mining the public chain, and the attacker is mining the shadow chain.
And to win, the attacker must have more than 50% of the total network hash rate. They literally have to mine blocks faster than the rest of the world combined.
So the attacker just waits until the exchange sees the deposit buried under, say, 100 blocks.
Yep. The exchange thinks it's secure, so they credit the attacker's account.
Then the attacker quickly sells that $5 million of Ethereum Classic for Bitcoin and withdraws the Bitcoin to an anonymous wallet.
The heist is complete. But the cleanup is the truly devastating part.
Because now they have to reveal their shadow chain.
Exactly. The attacker takes their secret shadow chain, which they've been mining faster, meaning it has more cumulative work, and they broadcast it to the public network.
So the honest nodes look at this new shadow chain. They see it has more proof of work.
And since they are programmed to always follow the longest chain, they drop their own history.
They just drop the last 100 blocks.
Yep, they drop them and accept the attacker's timeline as the new objective truth.
And in that new timeline, the deposit to the exchange never even happened.
The exchange is suddenly out $5 million, and the attacker still has their original Ethereum Classic tokens, plus the Bitcoin they ran away with.
Which perfectly illustrates why Bitcoin's massive energy consumption is a feature, not a bug, right?
It is. To pull off a 51% attack on Bitcoin today, you would have to secretly outmine hundreds of exahashes.
You'd have to covertly build chip foundries, secure gigawatts of power, and coordinate logistics on the scale of a nation-state.
The energy expenditure is a physical wall protecting the ledger.
But it is a wall that costs like 100 to 175 terawatt hours a year to maintain.
Which is like the energy consumption of a mid-sized country.
Right, and that environmental critique of proof of work drove the entire industry to ask a really profound question.
Can we achieve the exact same economic security without the thermodynamic waste?
Can we replace the physical constraint of burned energy with the financial constraint of locked capital?
Enter proof of stake.
We have to talk about Ethereum's merge in September 2022. That was wild.
It was unprecedented. They essentially ripped out the proof of work engine and replaced it with proof of stake while the network was processing billions of dollars in real time.
And it cut Ethereum's energy consumption by 99.9% overnight.
It was a total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
In proof of stake, you don't buy an ASIC and plug it into the wall.
Right. You buy the native asset 32 ETH, in Ethereum's case, and you lock it into a smart contract.
That is your bonded stake.
So that 32 ETH is your Sybil resistance. If you want 1 million votes, you need to lock up 32 million ETH.
Exactly. But it's also your collateral. Because there is no hashing lottery anymore, the protocol relies on a strict schedule.
Time is divided into 12-second slots, right?
Right. For every slot, the protocol pseudo-randomly selects one validator to be the block proposer.
So they build the block and broadcast it. But wait, what stops them from just proposing a block that gives them 1 billion free tokens?
The attesters. For that same 12-second slot, a large committee of other validators is selected to check the proposer's work.
Ah, okay.
They execute all the transactions in the proposed block, verify the math, and if it's clean, they generate a cryptographic signature.
An attestation, basically voting for that block.
Exactly. But this introduces the greatest theoretical vulnerability in the history of consensus mechanisms.
The nothing at stake problem. Let's look at the game theory here because it's fascinating.
In proof of work, if the network accidentally splits into two competing chains, a miner has a physical problem.
Right, they have 10,000 ASIC machines. They cannot point them at both chains.
Exactly. They have to split their hash power, which dilutes their chances of winning either race. Thermodynamics forces miners to pick a side and defend it.
But in proof of stake, generating an attestation signature takes zero electricity.
It's just a digital signature.
So if I see two competing blocks for the same slot, why wouldn't I just sign both of them?
You'd want to. If you vote for every possible timeline, you guarantee that you're on the winning chain no matter how the fork resolves.
I always get my staking reward. It's a free lunch.
But if every validator acts perfectly rationally and votes for everything, forks never resolve.
The network would just grind to a halt in a chaotic web of alternate timelines, and double spending becomes trivial.
So how does Ethereum survive this?
Slashing.
Yes, slashing is the mechanism that gives proof of stake its teeth.
It turns that vote for everything strategy into financial suicide, doesn't it?
It does. The protocol is hard-coded to hunt for two specific, mathematically provable crimes.
Yeah.
Double proposing and double voting.
Let's focus on double voting for a second.
Oh.
If I am in a tester and I try to hedge my bets by voting for Block A and Block B in the same slot, I've just generated two distinct cryptographic signatures using my private key.
You've basically handed the network a signed confession of your betrayal.
Wow.
Anyone running a node can take your two contradictory signatures, package them into a transaction, and submit them to the network.
The protocol verifies the signatures, realizes I tried to vote on two timelines simultaneously, and instantly executes me.
It aggressively burns a portion of your locked 32 ETH, and it violently ejects your validator from the network.
And the penalty is dynamic, isn't it?
Very much so.
Yeah.
If you were a solo validator who accidentally double voted due to like a software misconfiguration, you might only lose a fraction of an ETH.
But if 30% of the network all double votes at the exact same time,
The protocol recognizes a coordinated attack. The correlation penalty kicks in.
meaning the more validators that commit the offense simultaneously, the harsher the burn.
Exactly. An attacker trying to finalize a fake chain would see their entire 32 ETH wiped out per validator.
We are talking about billions of dollars in locked capital mathematically vaporized in a single block.
What's fascinating here is how proof of work deters attacks by making them expensive to execute, whereas proof of stake deters them by making the failure state unimaginably punitive.
But entirely abandoning physical energy for pure economics introduces some terrifying new vulnerabilities, right?
The concept of finality fundamentally changes.
Let's talk about probabilistic versus economic finality. In Bitcoin, when you buy a house and the transaction gets mined into a block, you don't pop the champagne immediately.
You definitely shouldn't. You wait.
You wait for the next block to be built on top of yours, then the next one.
Exchanges usually wait for 6 confirmations, which takes about an hour.
Because the finality is probabilistic. It is never mathematically impossible for an attacker to unleash a 7-block shadow chain and reorg your transaction.
The probability of that happening just approaches 0 as the honest chain gets longer.
But proof-of-stake networks like Ethereum want stronger guarantees than that.
They do. They use a finality gadget. Ethereum is called Casper FFG.
Casper operates on a wider time frame, right?
Yes. Every 32 slots, which is an epoch of about 6.4 minutes, the network establishes a checkpoint.
So validators don't just vote on the current block.
No, they also vote to link the previous checkpoint to the current checkpoint.
It's a two-step process, justification and finalization.
Exactly. When a 2/3 supermajority of all staked ETH votes for the link, the target checkpoint becomes justified.
And then?
When the next epoch completes the exact same process, the previous checkpoint transitions from justified to finalized.
Which is where the 3f+1 math from the Byzantine generals comes roaring back.
Once a checkpoint is finalized by that supermajority, it is written in stone.
So for an attacker to rewrite a finalized block, they would have to get a conflicting checkpoint finalized.
But 2/3 of the network already finalized the honest checkpoint. To get a supermajority on a conflicting one, at least 1/3 of the total network stake would have to provably vote for both timelines.
They would have to double vote.
And we know what happens to double voters.
They'd get slashed.
The Casper FFG finality gadget ensures that reversing a finalized transaction guarantees the destruction of at least 1/3 of all staked ETH.
As of our current network state, you're talking about instantly burning tens of billions of dollars.
Economic finality. You can't outmine it. You literally have to destroy 1/3 of the network's market cap just to reverse a coffee purchase.
It's incredibly secure. But, and this is a massive but, it relies entirely on the internal state of the ledger.
Which leads to the most damning critique of proof of stake: weak subjectivity.
This is a genuine, unavoidable trust assumption that simply does not exist in proof of work,
It's
right?
not.
In Bitcoin, I can buy a brand new hard drive, install Bitcoin Core, turn on my computer, and connect to the network completely blind.
Yeah.
My node downloads the data, tallies up the physical hash work, and objectively arrives at the canonical truth. It verifies the thermodynamics without trusting anyone.
But you cannot do that on Ethereum today
Why not?
because of the long-range attack. Let's role-play this time travel scenario because it's the core vulnerability of proof of stake.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's say you and I were massive validators back in 2020. We controlled 55% of the total staked ETH.
We were huge whales.
Huge whales. But in 2022, we decided to exit. We unstaked our ETH, sold it on an exchange, bought a private island, and completely left the Ethereum ecosystem.
So we have zero stake left in the current real-world timeline.
Right. But we still have the private keys we used back in 2020.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So from our private island, we decide to attack the network today. We look at the blockchain state as it was in 2020, back when we held the majority.
And using our old keys, we start forging a completely alternate history from that point forward.
A parallel universe.
But wait, in proof of work, catching up to the present day would require us to burn 4 years' worth of electricity.
We'd have to outpace 4 years of global hash rate.
But in proof of stake, there is no electricity to burn. Creating a block is just generating a digital signature.
Exactly. We can forge 4 years of alternate blockchain history on a standard laptop in a matter of minutes.
Costless simulation.
And because we already withdrew and sold our stake in the real timeline, the network can't slash us.
We have no collateral left to burn. The protocol can't reach into our bank accounts and take back the fiat money we got from selling.
Precisely. So now we take our completely fake, mathematically valid 4-year alternate history and broadcast it to the network.
So a brand new user boots up their node for the first time. The node connects to the internet and sees 2 chains.
The real chain and our fake chain.
And both chains are perfectly valid cryptographically, right?
Yes. Both chains are signed by entities that held the correct amount of stake at the time the blocks were produced.
And because there is no accumulated physical energy to measure, the new node has absolutely zero objective way to tell which chain is the real one and which is the simulation.
This is terrifying.
How do networks fix this?
By introducing weak subjectivity. A new node syncing from scratch cannot operate in a vacuum. It must rely on information from outside the protocol.
It needs exactly one recent, honest checkpoint hash, like an anchor point.
Yes. If your node has a trusted checkpoint from, say, 3 weeks ago, it looks at our 4-year fake history, realizes it doesn't match the 3-week-old anchor, and immediately rejects it.
It syncs objectively from that anchor forward.
But think about what this means for you, the listener. If you are running a node or managing infrastructure for an exchange.
You cannot just blindly download the software and trust it.
No, you have to obtain that weak subjectivity checkpoint from a source you actually trust.
You have to check a block explorer, ask a friend on Twitter, or blindly trust the hard-coded checkpoint the core developers put into the client software.
It shifts the trust model completely. Proof of work relies entirely on objective physics. Proof of stake requires a localized, subjective injection of trust to bootstrap its security.
It's a pragmatic compromise. And speaking of pragmatic compromises, what happens when you look at these two behemoths, Bitcoin processing 7 transactions a second, Ethereum doing maybe 15, and say, that's not good enough?
I need an exchange that processes 10,000 trades a second.
Right. When you optimize for raw speed at the base layer, you inevitably fracture the consensus architecture.
We see this in networks using delegated proof of stake or DPoS like EOS and Tron.
In Ethereum, anyone with 32 ETH can validate. There are hundreds of thousands of validators globally. It's heavily decentralized, but coordinating them all takes time.
Network latency is a harsh mistress.
DPoS sidesteps the latency by changing the rules. If you hold tokens on EOS, you don't validate blocks.
You use your tokens as ballots to vote for a cartel of delegates. Usually it's a fixed number like 21 block producers.
So it's just 21 servers.
Exactly. Instead of globally distributing the consensus, you concentrate it into 21 ultra-powerful enterprise servers sitting in high-speed data centers.
And coordinating 21 servers is trivial. The network moves with blistering speed.
Transactions confirm almost instantly. The fees are basically zero.
But the game theory decays rapidly, doesn't it?
It does. DPoS networks inevitably suffer from voter apathy. Normal users don't actively manage their votes, so massive exchanges and whale accounts end up dominating the voting process.
They just vote for themselves.
They do. The 21 delegates become an entrenched oligarchy. They form a cartel, split the block rewards, and it becomes nearly impossible to vote them out.
You've achieved massive scalability by entirely sacrificing censorship resistance and decentralization.
Okay, so DPoS uses a cartel. What about the Cosmos ecosystem? They use Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus directly, specifically Tendermint, which is now Comet BFT.
Tendermint is brilliant because it bolts the classical 1982 generals problem directly onto a blockchain.
It doesn't use the probabilistic guessing of Bitcoin or the epoch-based finality of Ethereum.
It uses explicit parliamentary voting rounds for every single block. Walk me through a Tendermint block.
A validator proposes a block. Then every validator in the active set broadcasts a pre-vote message to every other validator.
Okay.
Then they all broadcast a pre-commit message.
So it's an all-to-all communication mesh.
Yes. And the moment a node sees that more than 2/3 of the voting power has pre-committed to the block, that block is instantly, irreversibly final.
There is no waiting for confirmations. There are no reorgs.
Absolute finality in 1 to 6 seconds.
That is incredible. If you are building an order book exchange or sending assets across different chains, you need to know immediately that the trade is permanent.
But the all-to-all communication is the bottleneck. The message overhead grows quadratically.
Right. If you have 10 validators, that's 100 messages.
If you have 1,000 validators, that's 1,000,000 messages flying across the internet every 3 seconds. The network basically chokes on its own voting traffic.
Which is why Cosmos chains typically cap their active validator sets at around 100 or 150.
You trade broad decentralization for instant finality. But Tendermint makes another, much deeper philosophical trade-off regarding the CAP theorem.
Safety versus liveness. This is crucial.
Imagine a massive undersea internet cable gets severed. Europe is suddenly disconnected from the United States.
In Bitcoin, the network just splits. The miners in Europe keep building blocks based on what they see. The miners in the US keep building blocks.
The chain temporarily forks. Bitcoin prioritizes liveness. The chain must never stop ticking.
But in Tendermint, what happens when that cable is cut? Suppose 40% of the voting power is in Europe and 60% is in the US.
Neither side has the 67% supermajority needed to finalize a block.
Exactly. The protocol cannot mathematically reach a decision.
So instead of guessing or forking, a Tendermint chain simply halts. It completely stops producing blocks.
The entire financial network freezes in place until the cable is repaired and the validators reconnect.
It prioritizes safety over liveness. It would rather die than risk creating two conflicting realities.
Which is a feature if you are processing high-value cross-border payments, but a massive liability if you want a system that survives a global catastrophe.
And if we want to talk about taking these trade-offs to their logical extreme, we have to look at proof of authority.
POA drops the pretense of crypto entirely, doesn't it?
There is no staking, no mining, no anonymous validators. The network is run by a fixed list of legally identified entities.
Real-world corporations, universities, or banks. You trust their legal reputation, not their cryptographic collateral.
Which sounds completely antithetical to the whole cypherpunk ethos.
Yeah, why use a blockchain at all if JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are just taking turns signing the blocks? They could collude and rewrite the ledger tomorrow.
They absolutely could. But for enterprise use cases like tokenizing real-world assets, issuing central bank digital currencies, or settling interbank transfers, proof of authority is exactly what they want.
They don't want censorship resistance. They want strict regulatory compliance with a cryptographically auditable trail.
It's a shared corporate database wearing a blockchain trench coat.
So we've pegged consensus to electricity, to capital, and to legal reputation. Can we peg it to something else entirely? Like, what about time itself?
We have to dive into Solana.
Yes, because Solana is defined by a massive misconception. You will hear people, even developers, say that Solana uses proof of history for consensus.
And the source text explicitly calls this out as a myth. Proof of history does not achieve consensus.
It doesn't.
No. Solana actually uses a highly optimized proof of stake mechanism integrated with a variant of BFT.
Proof of history is just a clock.
Exactly, a cryptographic stopwatch layered underneath the consensus engine.
But why does a blockchain need a clock?
Well, in Ethereum or Cosmos, if thousands of transactions flood the network simultaneously, the validators have to spend time arguing over the exact order.
Did Alice's trade happen before Bob's?
That ordering process requires voting, which consumes precious block time.
So Solana engineers realize that if you can mathematically prove the order of events before the validators even see them, you eliminate the arguing bottleneck.
But how do you prove physical time elapsed without trusting a centralized server?
You build a verifiable delay function, a VDF, and Solana uses our old friend, the SHA-256 hash.
But instead of trying to find leading zeros like Bitcoin, they run a sequential hash chain.
Unpack the mechanics of a sequential chain for us.
You take a seed value and hash it. You take the output of that hash and you immediately hash it again. You take that output, hash it again. You do this millions of times in a row.
Wait, I see why it has to be a continuous chain. If you hash the output of the previous hash, I can't parallel process it.
No, you can't. Even if you have a server rack with 10,000 GPUs, it doesn't help you.
I literally have to wait for step 99 to finish before I can start step 100. You've trapped my supercomputer in a single file line.
Exactly. You force the hardware to experience the actual passage of time. Computing a million sequential hashes takes a predictable amount of physical time on modern silicon.
So it's a ticking clock, but how does this actually order transactions?
As transactions come into the Solana network, the lead invalidator takes them and literally injects them into this ongoing hash sequence.
The source compares it to a notary public with a sequential ink stamp. Stamp 1, stamp 2, stamp 3.
Right. If Alice's transaction is stamped at hash sequence 5 million and Bob's is stamped at 5.1 million, it is mathematically proven that Alice's transaction occurred first.
When the validator broadcasts the block, the other nodes don't need to vote on the order.
They just verify the hash chain, which crucially can be verified in parallel very quickly and accept the sequence.
This pre-agreed ordering is the secret sauce. It's what allows Solana to blast through thousands of transactions per second with 400 millisecond block times. It's insanely fast.
But the hardware requirements are brutal.
Oh, yeah. To keep that proof of history clock ticking fast enough and to process the fire hose of incoming data, running a Solana node requires an enterprise-grade machine.
Hundreds of gigabytes of RAM, blazing fast NVMe drives, massive multi-core CPUs, and gigabit internet connections.
A setup that costs thousands of dollars and requires serious technical chops to maintain. You can't just run this on a spare laptop in your dorm room.
It pushes the network heavily toward centralization, and pushing the hardware to its absolute physical limits has real consequences.
Solana has suffered multiple high-profile outages where the network simply buckled under transaction spam and halted for hours.
Blazing speed built on a razor's edge.
Speaking of hardware, we should touch on the strangest attempt to solve the Sybil problem proof of space, the Chia network.
Right. If proof of work uses CPUs and proof of stake uses capital, proof of space uses physical hard drive storage.
Instead of miners, you have farmers. You dedicate terabytes of empty disk space to the network, and your probability of winning the block reward is proportional to how much space you allocate.
The initial pitch was brilliant marketing. Green crypto.
They argued that since an idle hard drive draws almost no power compared to an ASIC, it would be environmentally friendly.
I remember when Chia launched in 2021, the reality was pure chaotic irony.
You don't just allocate empty space, do you? You have to fill it with massive pre-computed cryptographic tables called plots.
And creating those plots, the plotting process, requires continuous, high-intensity read-write operations.
It triggered a massive global run on high-capacity hard drives. It was almost impossible to buy storage for a while.
But worse, the plotting process literally shredded consumer-grade SSDs. It burned through their write cycle endurance in a matter of weeks, turning thousands of drives into dead silicon.
The network avoided burning electricity by accidentally incentivizing the mass production of physical electronic waste.
Proof of space proved that any resource tied to a financial incentive will eventually be aggressively industrialized.
Which brings us to the ultimate realization of this entire deep dive.
Every single mechanism we have analyzed today is deeply, fundamentally flawed.
Bitcoin is secure, but handles fewer transactions than a small-town grocery store. Ethereum is secure, but gas fees can spike to $100.
Solana is lightning fast, but centralized and prone to crashing. EOS is a cartel. Tendermint halts when it gets confused.
Why? Why hasn't a team of genius computer scientists just built the perfect, flawless blockchain?
Because of the scalability trilemma. This concept, popularized by Vitalik Buterin, is the master key to understanding all of crypto architecture.
The trilemma dictates that a blockchain can only comfortably optimize for 2 of 3 core properties at the base layer: decentralization, security, and scalability.
It must inevitably compromise on the third. Let's break those down.
Decentralization means anyone can run a node. Low barriers to entry. No central point of failure.
Security means the cost to attack the network is astronomically high.
And scalability means high throughput, thousands of transactions a second, with low latency and tiny fees.
The conflict between these three is not a software bug. It is a fundamental physical limitation of network bandwidth and hardware.
Let's illustrate this. If I look at Bitcoin and say 7 transactions a second is pathetic, let's scale it to handle the global Visa network.
The easiest way to scale is simply to increase the block size. Shove 100 megabytes of transactions into every block instead of 1 megabyte.
But if we connect that to the bigger picture, to the physical reality of the nodes,
A 100 megabyte block every 10 minutes means a node operator has to download, process, and store gigabytes of data every single day.
my home internet connection caps out. My laptop CPU bottlenecks trying to verify thousands of cryptographic signatures every second.
And your hard drive fills up in a month.
Exactly. So you, the average user, are forced to turn your node off. You just can't keep up.
And who is left running the network?
Only massive server farms located in Amazon or Google data centers with fiber optic connections.
So by forcing scalability, you have completely destroyed decentralization.
The network is now run by 50 corporate servers. And because it's centralized into just 50 servers, it is incredibly easy for a government to subpoena them or a hacker to target them.
So security drops as well. The trilemma is inescapable at layer 1. You map the networks, and they all fall on an edge of the triangle.
Bitcoin and Ethereum shows decentralization and security. They sacrifice scalability, which is why they are slow and expensive.
Solana chose scalability and security. They sacrificed decentralization by requiring massive hardware.
DPoS chose scalability and security by sacrificing decentralization to a 21-node cartel.
It is a brutal tug-of-war.
So how does the industry actually survive? If you can't have a global, fast, decentralized network, what are we even doing here? What is the escape hatch?
Modularity. The realization that you should stop trying to force one single blockchain to do everything. The escape hatch is layer 2 networks.
Rollups. Arbitrum, optimism, base.
Exactly. The architecture of the future acknowledges the trilemma. It keeps the base layer 1 Ethereum, for example, incredibly slow, massively decentralized, and hyper-secure.
It acts as the ultimate immutable settlement court. You don't buy a coffee on the Supreme Court steps.
Right. You move the fast, cheap execution of transactions up to a layer 2 rollup.
The layer 2 operates like a highly scalable, almost centralized server. It processes thousands of trades a second for pennies.
But instead of relying on the layer 2 for security, the layer 2 bundles those thousands of transactions together.
It generates a complex cryptographic proof of their validity and submits that tiny proof down to the slow, secure layer 1.
So you get the blazing speed of a centralized database, mathematically anchored to the decentralized security of the base layer.
I'm cheating the trilemma by splitting the jobs across the different layers.
Precisely. This is why interacting with modern crypto applications almost entirely happens on layer 2 networks now.
Sharding is another approach, right? Splitting the base layer database into pieces so nodes don't have to download everything.
Yeah, but the underlying philosophy remains the same. Specialize the layers.
This has been an absolute marathon of a deep dive. We started with Byzantine generals sending treacherous messengers on horseback.
We watched Bitcoin solve the Sybil attack by burning exahashes of energy in a global lottery.
We saw Ethereum transition to proof of stake, relying on the violent financial threat of slashing to keep validators in line.
We navigated the terrifying time travel of long-range attacks and the absolute necessity of weak subjectivity.
And we explored the bleeding-edge speed of Tendermint, DPoS, and Solana's cryptographic clocks.
We've basically looked under the hood of an industry desperately trying to reach agreement in an inherently hostile environment.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. If the trilemma proves that the perfect single blockchain is just a mathematical illusion,
Then the future of money isn't about finding one flawless network to rule them all.
instead it's about a modular future, deciding exactly which trade-offs you are willing to accept for every single transaction you make.
Do you want the unbreakable slowness of pure physics or the blazing speed of a corporate cartel?
The choice is entirely yours. The room full of liars hasn't gone away. But now you understand exactly how they are forced to tell the truth. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the architecture behind the noise.